Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to just give a few moments for everyone to um, sign into the room with us. Welcome, welcome. Trying to wait for the numbers to stabilize out to make sure we give everybody the same information at the same time. So just another minute or two, and then we will get started. Looks like they're still coming in. So one more minute, we'll start at 2:03. Okay, well, welcome to our session on the interim final rule. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule this afternoon for this very important discussion. My name is Sharice Myrie, and I am Vice President of MH Miles Company, and we are the supportive services consultant for Georgia DOT, and are excited to facilitate this discussion with GDOT and MARTA today. We'll walk through the recent changes during our time together that affect the DBE certification and the steps that both GDOT and MARTA will take next. Just wanted to bring your attention to the information that was available in our announcement. So when we sent out the announcement for this session, we provided links to the interim final rule, to USDOT's guidance and frequently asked questions, along with GDOT's letter to Federal Highway Administration. I know that some of you may have registered through an association and may not have seen those links. So we're going to take this time now to put those links for you in the chat. So that's something that you can reference if you did not have an opportunity to see it before now. Also, I wanted to just introduce our team, the MH Miles Company team, that is also joining us and working in the background to compile your questions and make sure that this session flows smoothly. We have Carol Phelps, who is our supportive services manager, Tony Miles, who is our manager with DBE certification and also provides support to the supportive services activity that the firm does for GDOT. We have Marcus DeMoran, who also, Marcus DeMoran and Jada Miles, who both work with the DBE certification, application review, as well as supporting activities associated with state supported services activities. And so the other thing that you'll notice is that as part of the registration process, you had an opportunity to submit your questions. And so we have received many thoughtful questions in advance. And our goal is to go through those questions that were submitted and answer any questions that you may have live during our time together today. Please know that if for some reason we don't get to all of your questions today, that you will be provided a QR code at the end of the session to submit any feedback or additional questions that you may have. I wanted to share that this morning we had a session similar to this one for the DBE community specifically. And then following that session, we had one for local governments so that everybody is hearing the same information and is aware of what the expectations are and the requirements are moving forward. For this particular session, the session is being recorded. And so what we'll do is share a link to the recording along with the slides to all those that have registered for this particular session here for the Prime community. So our goal today is very clear, and that is to communicate what has changed, what that means for GDOT and MARTA and DBE firms, as well as primes, and the path forward. And so, with that said, I would like to introduce our panelists today. And we have Kimberly King, who is the Director of Equal Employment Opportunity for the Georgia Department of Transportation, and Paula Nash, who is the Assistant General Manager of Corporate Compliance and Engagement at MARTA. And I'm going to ask that each of them take a few seconds to share one thing that you would like the Prime community to listen in for today as we move forward with this discussion.
Paula, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, glad the Prime community has joined us here today. I guess the one thing that I want them to listen out for is, well, to understand, all this was dropped on us at the same time that it was dropped on you all as well as the DBE community. So we're all learning together. But as we learn more information, it is our hopes to pass that information on to you all. So I'm hoping that what you will get out of this session is a better understanding and more clarification as to what happens from here, the processes that will occur. So hopefully you will get that understanding.
Thank you. Kimberly, anything you would like for them to listen out for?
I think that's exactly right. I think that the objective of this conversation is clarity, to the extent that we are able to provide same. We are all traversing this new area, this very significant change to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program together. We are figuring it out. We have some answers and not others. Some things have been clearly articulated to us, some things have not. And so we know that there is a need to conduct what has been referred to as a reevaluation, and that is something that we have determined it appropriate to create for ourselves. And so some of the changes to the program are changes that require something of us without a lot of direction to us. And so we are going to work through those things to the very best of our ability, keeping you informed, keeping the DBE and small business community informed, keeping our local government partners informed. That was certainly the thought process for these meetings today, to be as communicative and transparent as we can. We know that yours are energies and efforts that do a lot of driving for the machine that is the Georgia Department of Transportation's road work activity, both in the design and construction element. So we thank you for that, and want to continue to work with you in successfully completing these projects and making the Georgia roadways, highways, transportation system the safest and most efficient in the country for people who are traveling to, through, and in the state of Georgia. So what we hope that you take away today is clarity. Clarity and transparency as it relates to our objective of being compliant to and with this interim final rule that we have been provided by our federal operating administration. Thank you, Sharice.
Yeah. And I will say, just to manage expectations where there are definitive answers to questions that come up, you'll hear those. And where the agencies are still working through and building certain things, you'll hear that as well. We also want to let you know that as the Prime community, we invite you to share with us um, your intentions moving forward as well. So we will provide space for you to provide some feedback regarding the positioning of your business activities moving forward in light of the interim final rule. So, with that said, we're going to just jump right in and talk about the changes to the program. So, we all know that on October 3rd, that USDOT issued an interim final rule or guidance to that final rule. And what I'll do at this time is bring in our panel to tell us in practical terms what changed and why it matters. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind summarizing that for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharice. So, the on October 3rd, 2025, we were all made aware by the United States Department of Transportation that there was an intention to change the parameters of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. Prior to that date, the part of the eligibility inquiry for my staff here at the Georgia Department of Transportation, for Paula's staff at MARTA, in terms of reviewing and assessing eligibility criteria for the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, was to see that the 51% owner of the firm seeking certification was itself owned by a presumptively disadvantaged individual. So if you were an ethnic minority or a female, you were presumptively disadvantaged for purposes of program participation. However, that was not the beginning and the end of the inquiry for us in terms of eligibility. There were other eligibility criteria that we had to consider in determining whether or not your firm could participate as a disadvantaged business enterprise. On October 3rd, that presumption of disadvantage, as it had previously been articulated in the Code of Federal Regulations, was no more. It had been removed, and very specifically, a directive was provided to us as the individuals responsible for reviewing the eligibility criteria. We were tasked with providing a reevaluation to all of the firms that had been previously certified under that presumption of disadvantage rule. So for the Georgia Department of Transportation and MARTA, that means that we have 4,000 plus firms that will be subject to the reevaluation that is described in the interim final rule. The reevaluation is in the interim final rule, but there was no specific direction given to us about what that re-evaluation should look like. So for us, what that means is that we must have each of those firm owners, those 4,000 plus firms that had been previously certified, provide to us what is referred to as a personal narrative of individual disadvantage. So the objective is to allow each of those previously certified firms to describe their disadvantage in American life, in business, in access to financial resources, in an academic or educational setting. So those individualized statements of disadvantage must be provided, must be assessed, must be reviewed by my team, by Paula's team at MARTA, by our supportive services consultants who assist us with some of that evaluation, and a determination is then going to be made about whether or not the firms continue to meet the eligibility criteria. The other significant change was that our DBE goal setting considerations will change based on the timeline for our reevaluation. So until those 4,000 plus firms are reevaluated and determined to meet or not the new eligibility criteria that removes the presumption of disadvantage, we cannot attach DBE goals to any new projects, nor can we count DBE participation toward our overall agency goal. So those are the two most significant changes that occurred in the interim final rule that we are now attempting to navigate, interpret, and implement as it relates to our program activity.
Thank you, Kimberly. So now that we've kind of gotten a summary of the changes, and one of the questions that we received is, are all the DBE firms decertified at this point?
Paula, you want to take that one?
Sorry, had myself on mute. Sure, I will take that one. No, all of the DBE firms are not decertified at this point in time. And I'm looking for the actual rule that talks about it. But
Page 5,
page 5. Okay, there we
item number
go.
4.
There we go.
There you go.
The question asks, can a UCP simply decertify all currently certified DBEs without completing the re-evaluation process? And the answer to that, like I said, is no. The IFR requires UCPs to identify each currently certified DBE and provide each identified firm with the opportunity to submit documentation demonstrating its DBE eligibility under the new standards that have been given to us with the interim final rule. So no, they are not decertified at this point in time.
Okay, thank you for that. And so how does this new rule affect firms whose applications were in process prior to October 3rd, or firms that are applying for the first time to the program?
So again, as Paula indicated, the objective for us is to reevaluate all of our currently certified firms. And it feels like, again, without sort of a specific direction, it feels like the interim final rule is saying to us that those 4,000 plus previously certified firms must be reconsidered, reevaluated before anything else happens. So for us, we are treating those currently certified firms as our priority in terms of the review and assessment that must happen. So a personal narrative form will need to be provided to all of those currently 4,000 plus certified firms for them to tell us, for them to credibly describe their individual disadvantage in one of those areas that we talked about, an academic environment, a business environment, access to financial resources, for them then to allow us to assess their continued eligibility for DBE participation. So we believe that we deal first with those existing firms, and then any new application that we receive certainly will be assessed, but it will be assessed with one, not only the current application, but also a personal narrative. So even those new firms must submit a personal narrative that describes credibly their individual disadvantage. And until we have reevaluated the existing firms, those new applications are essentially put on hold until we have an opportunity to review those along with the existing certified firms.
Thank you. So, with that, we've talked about, applications in progress, those new applications. What about the interstate firms?
Paula?
You want me to grab that?
Yeah, would you?
Sure. So under the IFR, interstate firms must first receive their reevaluation from their original jurisdiction. So jurisdiction of certification. So first you must get that from your original jurisdiction. Once that occurs and you have been found to be eligible, at that point in time, you then have to reapply for interstate certification. So it starts with your original jurisdiction of certification.
So that, thank you, Paula, that original jurisdiction of certification is what we commonly refer to as a home state, right? So your home state has to first put you back into the system as an eligible to be certified firm based on your personal narrative. Only then can you go out and start seeking interstate certification. But I would say that all of us, all of our state DOTs that have such a program are going through the same process. We are all having to reevaluate our existing firms before we can even consider interstate certification. So it's going to take us, all of us, a little while, some of us longer than others. Those really large states that have, thousands of currently certified firms have to reevaluate all of those certified firms. Again, GDOT has more than 4,000. So we are all going to be focused, I believe, on those currently certified firms before we start looking at any interstate certifications, though that continues to be an option available to DBEs. It's not going to happen before we are able to reevaluate the existing certified firms.
Yeah, I think that's extremely helpful for this audience to hear because, you have firms that are certified in different places and
Yeah.
people, firms do business in different places. So that's definitely, important information for everyone to hear. So with that, we are going to move on to our next slide, which is really just illustrating what's next and honing in on this required personal narrative. And so, as mentioned earlier, the federal guidance requires that the disadvantaged owner provide a personal narrative that lays out specific barriers on how those barriers cause economic harm. In addition to that, a personal net worth statement needs to be submitted. And so both MARTA and GDOT will use this information for reevaluation and decisions going forward related to certification. So I want to just share with the audience how this personal narrative will be requested and what that will entail.
So again, as Ms. Myrie indicated, the interim final rule gave us direction to reevaluate all of our existing certified firms, but didn't, give us a lot of specificity about what reevaluation looks like. So as the certifying entities in the state of Georgia, MARTA and GDOT have for more than 20 years been assessing and reviewing firms that meet or do not meet our eligibility criteria or Fed's eligibility criteria to determine whether or not those firms can participate as disadvantaged business enterprises. So we're going to continue that work. We're going to continue that very diligent activity of reviewing, of assessing, of making a determination of who meets the criteria. Only this time, the criteria has changed, and we've been given instruction by the Federal Operating Administration in the interim final rule itself, in the FAQs in support of that interim final rule, and in the federal regulation at 49 CFR Part 26 about how to, we believe, go about doing that assessment. And so my team here at GDOT, Paula and her team at MARTA, the folk at the City of Atlanta and at the airport, all of whom are impacted very significantly by this interim final rule and the changes that it brings about, really sat and talked thoroughly. We discussed what was happening in other states, what was happening at the Small Business Administration, how we could go about crafting a form that provided an opportunity for these existing DBEs to be reevaluated. And what we've come up with is a personal narrative form that really does focus the DBE on telling us, credibly describing to us their experience of disadvantage as it relates to those three categories: academic or educational, business, and access to financial resources. So that personal narrative we want to have available electronically. We want you to be able to submit it to either MARTA or GDOT, depending on who was the agency that originally certified your firm. Once you have submitted the document, we then have the opportunity to review it. But that electronic availability is really, really very important in terms of ease of use and convenience to those firms that will need to submit this document. So we are working on having the document available electronically. Once it is available electronically, firms will then be able to click on it, review it, do their own assessment, fill it out, submit it, and we will have, a serial number so that we know which of those narratives was first submitted so that we can review them in the order received, both at MARTA and GDOT, so that we're able to get a response out. But the nature of the form as electronic is very, very important in terms of us being able to provide it to our audience. And so when it is ready, the audience, the DBEs, will receive a notification, much like was provided to you for this meeting, a constant contact type notification that there is a link available on our website, on MARTA's website, that provides you access to this personal narrative form electronically. You then are able to review and submit, and then we can begin the process of assessing for continued eligibility.
Fantastic. And so I think what that does is we've clearly communicated that the priority will be on this reevaluation process. And with that being the priority, what is there any timelines associated with this evaluation being implemented and any decisions being made? Is there any timeline required for that?
Paula?
So no, there are no timelines because the regulation does not provide a deadline for currently certified DBE to submit documentation demonstrating its DBE eligibility under the new standards. So no timeline or cutoff date for doing that, but do understand that firms that do not submit the necessary information will remain ineligible for the DBE program until they submit the required documentation demonstrating DBE eligibility under these new standards.
Thank you. So we know the personal narrative is a big part of that moving forward. And as you'll see on the screen, this slide just illustrates what the path forward looks like from this day moving forward as we're looking at implementing, as the agencies are looking at implementing this interim final rule. And so we just spend a little time on what that individualized narrative looks like. But you see the next bullet, which is staff support and training. And um, Kimberly, can you talk a little bit about what that means and what we're trying to illustrate here as it relates to rolling this out?
Absolutely. So this slide really is giving you some insight into our thought process to how we sat, MARTA, GDOT, the city of Atlanta, the airport, how we sat and thought, how we talked, how we collaborated on, how do we articulate our next steps relative to our best attempt at being compliant with the instruction provided to us in the interim final rule. And this slide, this path forward slide, is what we came up with. So, first we had to think about that narrative. What must it include? How do we get it to you? Then the other thing that was really, really important to us was offering you, in the community, an assurance that we are going to carefully review the personal narrative that describes your individual disadvantage so that the team at MARTA, the team at GDOT, the team at our supportive services provider that will be helping us to do the assessment of the personal narrative are all considering the same thing at the same time. So we're going to be in the room together thinking about what that assessment should include. Again, we got instruction from the interim final rule to do the reevaluation, but we were not given instruction on how to reevaluate. So there is no checklist for us. There is nothing that says to us a personal narrative that is eligible for continued participation must contain this. A personal narrative that is not eligible for continued participation will likely be missing these things or will likely say something like this. We don't have that. So we have to come up with those guidelines ourselves. And we want to assure you that that's what we're doing, that we are doing that in a deliberate and thoughtful way, that we will be consistent across the board, whether you are being reviewed by MARTA or by GDOT or by the supportive services provider, that our consideration for that approval or denial of your personal narrative description is consistent with all of us as the ultimate reviewer of that narrative. So we really just wanted to offer assurance to all of you that we were going to support and train our staffs appropriately, deliberately, specifically, so that we are able to make sure we are doing what we need to in support of that consistent review of your personal narrative.
And I think that's really helpful to have that insight because it does provide assurance that existing firms will be, taken through the same process, and so that um, you know, each firm will have the consideration necessary to come to an outcome, and that outcome will be clear whether the firm is eligible or ineligible. So, with that in mind, um, can you share how firms, or if firms will be notified, how firms will be notified about the eligibility decision? And if they are deemed ineligible, then what does that appeal process look like?
Paula, you want to take that one?
Sure. So firms will receive their eligibility decision pretty much similar to how they did when they first became eligible. They'll receive it in writing, and you'll get that from GDOT if GDOT is re-evaluating you. If you're being re-evaluated through MARTA, you'll get it through our vendor support management system, the same system that you use for your application, same one you use for the renewal information. That's what you will get that through that portal that you have. So you will have it in writing. And there was a second part of the question.
The appeal process.
The appeal process. So for those firms that are found to not meet the eligibility requirements of the new standards, you will technically be decertified at that point in time. But there is an appeals process to the USDOT similar to the appeals process that was there for the initial application.
Thank you for that. So, it's clear that firms will know the decision, and they will have a path once they receive that decision. And so we know that until the UCP reevaluation is complete, that recipients covered by that UCP may not set contract goals, and they may not count them. You may not count participation towards those goals. So, during this time, let's share or answer some of the questions that we receive related to those contract goals. So, if a project um, was awarded prior to that October 3rd time frame, what is the expectation associated with DBE participation on those projects?
So, thank you, Sharice. I think, really of interest to this audience is sort of how the agency plans to implement the changes to the DBE goal setting consideration as it relates to our federally funded projects. And as we have been doing for both the morning and afternoon and this session, we really are relying on the interim final rule itself and on the FAQs in support of that rule to describe GDOT's next steps in terms of compliance. So again, the FAQ provides how does the interim final rule affect projects that are currently authorized or advertised and projects or contracts already awarded that have DBE goals. So the answer is one, recipients with DBE goals on contracts that have been advertised but not yet let, meaning the bids haven't yet opened, you must issue amendments to the advertisement removing the contract goals. So we would be doing supplemental agreements that remove the goals on those projects. Second type, for projects with DBE contract goals that have been let, meaning the bids have been opened, but the contracts have yet to be awarded, meaning they've not yet been executed, recipients must take appropriate action to zero out the DBE goal. Again, this is the language that we have received from the frequently asked questions that are in support of the interim final rule. And third, contracts with a DBE goal that were let and executed prior to October 3rd, 2025 are not required to be modified. To that, the commissioner has indicated to us very specifically that executed contracts prior to October 3rd with DBE goals will continue to have those goals and contract language enforced. However, we are unable to use the attainment of the DBE goal on that project to count toward our overall agency goal. So as everyone is aware, we have an overall agency goal that's right now 11%. And we use all of our contract specific goals to get to that overall 11% and then report that to the Federal Operating Administration because they want to know how and where their federal dollars are being spent. Our instruction is now that we will not be providing that goal attainment update in the semi-annual report until we have completed in its entirety the reevaluation for all of the currently certified disadvantaged business enterprises. So not until that reevaluation has been completed for all of those 4,000 plus firms can we again start considering how to attach DBE goals to our federally funded projects.
And so thank you for that. So with that said, just to reiterate, for those contracts that are in place, already executed and awarded with DBE participants on it, there is an expectation that those that participation remain. And what about replacing those DBEs or substituting them? Do the existing rules still apply in that case?
Yes, if you as a contractor are working with a subcontractor or DBE subcontractor that is in need of substitution, there is a process for that substitution to occur, and so the expectation is that process will be utilized to do the substitution. Not that you cannot substitute, not that you cannot remove a DBE if it is necessary to do so, but you must follow the process that exists in order to make that change.
And just to clarify, it being necessary is not as a result of this interim final rule.
No.
So that's clear that there should be, the expectation is that those firms would continue to work on, these projects as originally awarded.
Mhm.
So, okay, so I think that pretty much answers that. We did get some questions about state funded projects. So we know that our prime community also works on state funded projects. And the question is, will this interim final rule affect those state-funded opportunities?
So, as we indicated at the beginning of not only this conversation, but the two previous conversations, the interim final rule is provided to us by the United States Department of Transportation. They are the federal entity that funds projects through the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, Federal Aviation Administration, all of which are federally funded agencies that are providing us federal dollars to do the work activity that we do. We have state funded project activities, state capital construction projects, routine maintenance activity that we do with state dollars, money that we receive from our own Georgia state legislature. And those dollars do not require this interim final rule instruction to be applicable. So we have projects on which we attach what are called SBDBE goals. Those are small business, veteran-owned firms, or DBE firms can be utilized to meet the SVDBE goal. Those project types are not impacted by the interim final rule.
Yeah,
And
well, I think
also, MARTA has locally funded projects that would not be impacted by the interim final rule as well, because they're not federally funded.
okay. I think that the last set of questions that we had were in reference to the DBE database. So can firms expect a new database when they're looking, when they're as a database of DBEs? Will it be a new database starting over from scratch? Will it be the existing database with labels of eligible and ineligible, a hybrid of both? What do you guys envision the DBE database looking like as a result of this process based on the current guidance that we have?
So I'm going to say thank you to you, Sharice, for the sort of disclaimer that you put out at the beginning of this conversation when you said, if there is a definitive response, you will hear that. If there is not, you may hear that. I think that this is one area where there is not a definitive response yet. I can tell you that Paula's team at MARTA, my team here at GDOT, have spent lots of time talking with one another, considering, contemplating, discussing, massaging, trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And again, the instruction that we've received from the Federal Operating Administration is to reevaluate all of those existing 4,000 plus firms. So for me, the question is, we have an existing directory. Do we use that directory and pull out of it those firms that are determined no longer eligible based on the new rule? Or do we go through these personal narratives, make a determination of eligibility based thereon, and then create a new list of firms that meet that new eligibility criteria? I just don't know yet. I don't know if it's simpler to remove or start anew. And I don't think we've made that decision yet, but it is certainly in the offing in terms of our considerations, our many considerations for these changes that have been wrought by um, this interim final rule. And so we're thinking about it. I just don't know that we've arrived at a decision yet. Paula, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it. We're still trying to figure that part out.
Yeah, we're doing a little head scratching on that part.
That's fair. That's fair, considering the guidance to date, right? So, as you both work through this process, we will keep this audience and the larger DB audience aware of any new developments related to the changes. And
Absolutely.
I would like to invite. We've answered a lot of questions that we've received ahead of time. We invite you to ask any additional questions that you may have about the program. And I would like to invite the Prime community to share kind of their thoughts. I know you all have had internal discussions about the path forward for your firms, and what decisions, if any, have you all made concerning your relationships with work moving forward with the DBE community? And we're able to allow you to come off mute if you raise your hand or put in the chat that you have something that you'd like to share with the broader group.
I will say, Sharice, while you're waiting for those questions, if any, that this morning when you tasked Paula and I with sort of giving, the one thing that we hoped that our audience would take away, one of the things we talked about was clarity. One of the things that Paula indicated was, lack of anxiety. Please don't panic. And so, because we'd heard from a number of the DBE firms that they really were kind of anxious about what this change would mean for their firm, about what kind of participation opportunities, might be provided to them in the absence of some of the federally required language. And so we tried to offer them some assurance, much like we have in this session and the one before, that, GDOT, according to our commissioner, is busy. We are working. There's lots of work. We need all hands on deck to help us do all of that work. And so I would say that same thing to our prime, both construction and consultant community, that there's lots of work, that we need all hands on deck, that we hope we have been as transparent and communicative as we can be to you, and that understand that you have the ability to ask, to tell, to say, that which is at the forefront for you as part of the group that really does help us drive this GDOT engine.
And so I'm going to
Yeah, there's a question in
throw it
the
over to
chat.
the team to see if there's any comments or if anybody wants to come off mute to share.
Yeah, so Sharice, while you're doing that, there is a question already in the chat that says, is there any guidance for projects that have substantial completion or financial acceptance deadline set to occur prior to recertification being completed? And it seems to create an impossibility to complete the project for a DBE goal compliant from a DBE goal compliance perspective.
So, hey, Jed Cochran, thank you for that question. Jed is one of the best lawyers I know. And he and I have worked together here at GDOT in a number of instances. So Jed, in his new iteration, is doing some work for those consultants and those contractors with whom we work. And the answer, Jed, is I don't know that we have been given, frankly, any specificity about what that looks like. We are relying on the FAQs to answer some of our questions. We are asking for clarification on some items. As you may be aware, the chief engineer has submitted requests for clarification to all of the federal operating administrations, federal highway, federal transit, federal aviation, all of whom have indicated they are in receipt of our requests and are assessing our requests, but we've not received any, I think, clear and specific direction yet. We really are, sort of relying on the IFR that talks about contracting questions, in the FAQ that talks in sort of a minimal way about those projects that are have those open-ended evaluations that have to happen. You know that we have certain projects that don't have DBE goals attached to them, those very large sort of design, build, finance projects, for example. And so the rules applicable to those talk about those open-ended performance plans for design build. So there is at least an FAQ that speaks to those open-ended performance plans. That may get us to some of what your question is, but I think the short answer is no, we have not received any specific guidance and therefore don't have any specific guidance to share. That was what I refer to as a long road.
Yes, long. So, Tony, any other questions or do any of our participants want to share kind of their thoughts or questions moving forward? I will display this QR code for some feedback if you would like to submit it through the portal. But this session was intentional and designed specifically for you to hear from you about your thoughts and anticipated actions as it relates to next steps for your firm, and the agencies have shared the same. So I would invite you to, take advantage of this opportunity for this exchange, um, while we're all here. So, any other questions that we have in the chat or in the
So,
Q&A?
Sharice, to answer your question, there are no other questions in the chat or in the Q&A box. So again, if you have any feedback you'd like to share, you can raise your hand. We would certainly take you off mute or enter the questions in the chat or the Q&A.
Therese, while we're waiting, I would like to say something,
Sure.
particularly to this group. Yes, you will see that there will be plenty of projects coming up as we go through this reevaluation process that will have zero goals on them. But in Georgia, I just want to reiterate, there are a lot of wonderful subcontractors, small businesses in Georgia. And they are there. There are plenty that are ready and willing to do the work. Do not forget about these businesses just because there is a zero goal. They're capable, they do fine work. I know you all are familiar with them. Keep on using them.
Absolutely. I would certainly echo that sentiment and say that our commissioner, at almost every meeting he attends, leads with Georgia has been the #1 state in which to do business for, I believe we're now at year 12. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that, I believe in large part, is because our governor has done a tremendous job of making small business, of making Georgia-based small business a priority, of really making sure that there is room at the table, that there are opportunities being provided to these Georgia-based small businesses, and they are absolutely taking advantage of those opportunities. We had a forum last week where we were addressing our small business community. We talked to them about opportunities at the Department of Administrative Services and everything that's available through the Team Georgia Marketplace. We talked to them about local government opportunities in that, a lot of our local government, a lot of our counties and cities have preference programs for their resident businesses. Please take advantage of those things. So again, Georgia has been the #1 state in which to do business for the past 12 years for a reason. And it's because there is a talented group of small business entrepreneurs and business owners in Georgia that do tremendous work in every aisle of opportunity, in the construction side, in the consultant side. They're here, they are available, they are ready, willing, and able. We certainly have talked to them about where those opportunities are. We hope that you continue to talk to them about where those opportunities are and how they might take advantage of them. So thank you, Paula, for introducing that idea. That's absolutely true.
Yes, thank you. Well, I don't know that I see any additional questions from this community. And so,
There does appear to be a question
oh,
in
okay.
the chat.
Let's see if we can
Yeah,
see
no,
what that is.
the individual said he had had a sound
Oh,
and
okay.
light and might have missed when y'all talked about the narrative. In particular, is there specific guidance to the content of the narrative and when they are due?
So again, we have created this personal narrative form. We are working on getting this narrative form electronically available to our firms that must be reevaluated, either on the MARTA website or on the GDOT website. Once it is sound and electronically available, we will send a notification to all of those 4,000 plus firms that need to be reevaluated that the form is available. There is no, Paula indicated earlier that there is no due date specifically because we've not been instructed of a due date by the Federal Operating Administration. Instead, it says that we should conduct the reevaluation and complete the assessment as soon as is practicable. So that is the language that we are relying on. Once we have the form electronically available and send you notice, of its availability, the expectation is that you then will start submitting that narrative to us. We will have a serial number attached to the narrative so that we are able to determine when the narrative was submitted, and we are therefore doing our assessment based on order of precedence. When the form came in is when the form will be reviewed. We will review as received. So first in, first out.
Okay, that sounds good. So, I just want to just thank everybody for taking the time out today to uh, listen in on this very, very important topic. Please know that the agencies will keep you posted as new guidance becomes available. You see the contact information on your screen, so feel free to reach out. And also in that top corner is the QR code. So, feel free to scan that and ask us any questions that you have that you may think of and may not wanted to share in this particular forum. So with that said, I will extend the invitation to our panelists to offer any final comments or thoughts.
I'm going to say that my final comments really were those that I probably already offered as prompted by Paula's reminder that these firms are here and they're available. Again, Georgia is the #1 state in which to do business and has been for the last 12 years for a reason. And we believe that that is due in no small part to the availability, the talent, the gifts, the experience of those small Georgia-based businesses with whom all of you are working, have worked, can work. We encourage you to continue to do so. We encourage you to contact us if there's something that we can do to help to offer clarity. Again, we want to be as transparent and communicative as we can be with this community, as well as our local government and our DBE community, as it relates to the interim final rule, its implementation, and what that impact looks like here at the Georgia Department of Transportation. So we likely will do this again in person. We hope that that will happen before the end of the year, but we're working toward getting that personal narrative form out and available. Once we begin receiving and assessing, we can sort of have perhaps a more practical conversation about what we're seeing and what we're doing with the forms as they come in. So be on the lookout for that in-person meeting that, again, we hope to schedule and have happen before the end of 2025. Thank you.
And I will ditto that Kimberly just said. You have my contact information there if you have any questions. MARTA has plenty of projects coming up, so be on the lookout for projects. And like I said earlier, keep using small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you both. And I'll just say that, the program is still here. The firms are being reevaluated. And so no sense in reinventing the wheel, continue to cultivate relationships, establish new ones, cultivate existing ones with the DBE community so that once those goals return, the relationships will still be there. So with that said, thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Have an amazing rest of your day. And we will, share this recording along with the slides to all who have registered for this session. Thank you so much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.